Oh, yeah, here we go. Another American Jew podcast coming at you. My name is Jordan Ferber.
I'm Jonathan Randall, and you just can't get rid of us.
You couldn't if you tried. We're going to worm our way back into your ear every week.
Oh, okay. Hey, now we're getting into people's minds.
Yeah, I mean, this is when this week's Torah portion is all about all the rules and all the regulations.
A lot of rules and regulations, right?
A
53 mitzvot in this week's. 23 that are like imperative commandments and 30 that are prohibitions.
I know, can you believe? I mean,
30 prohibitions.
This is a lot. It's a lot to take in.
There were some that I thought were particularly noteworthy that I thought we could talk about.
Okay, let's hear them.
All right, honor your parents and do not strike them.
Don't
strike them.
Even if you think you can take them, don't.
Listen, I don't really like my dad that much, but I'll tell you one thing. I've never struck him. I've never hit him. Not once. Have you ever hit your parents?
No, I have never even thought about hitting my parents.
I like another like honor them and don't hit them.
Right.
That's what it says. Like, okay, like isn't that whole part of the honoring thing?
Is it possible to honor them while hitting them?
I honor you. I honor you, god damn it.
This honors you more than it honors me.
All right, so this next one I feel like has caused like a lot of problems.
Uh-oh.
Okay? I mean, not the beginning part, but I feel like the end part has caused a lot of problems.
Okay.
So, if two men fight and a pregnant woman is hit and miscarries, the husband shall fine the one responsible. But if the pregnant woman dies, then you must compensate a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, a bruise for a bruise.
Wow, they really go really hard on the eye for an eye. Like they
go all the way, and I feel like a lot of people like kind of accepted this kind of mentality, and this is like the way they live their life, and I disagree. I don't think so. You know, I know there's that expression, an eye for an eye, and everybody goes blind, and I feel like I'm more on that side than on this side.
This is one of those things where it's hard to figure out, like, is the Bible pro-life?
Well, no, I don't think it is, actually.
I mean, not this section.
When anyone opens a pit or leaves one uncovered and an animal falls into it, the person leaving the pit uncovered is responsible for the harm done to the animal. He must make fair payment for the loss, but may keep the dead animal.
Oh, wow.
Right? What a victory.
These are like how to deal with pranks.
Who's like, oh my gosh, I'm keeping this dead animal. Like, no, but it's decomposing and it smells. It's mine now. I paid the fine and now it's mine.
Well, I mean, you've heard these states where there's hunting. If you hit like a deer on the road, you can claim that if the person who hits the deer gets to claim the deer. But if they tell somebody, I'm not going to claim it, you can claim it. Then it's free game.
Oh, it's free game, no pun intended.
I mean, I'm gonna. Okay.
So if you just see a deer, you're like, you could take that deer. You're like, this deer is mine now. I'm going home with Bambi's mom. I don't care what you say.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if it relates to this particular Torah portion.
I don't think it relates to it at all. But okay, way to tie things in. If a man seduces an unmarried, sexually untouched woman, then he must make her his wife. If the father refuses to give her to him, he must still pay a fair rate for the untouched bride.
Okay.
Right? This one's a little weird. First of all, I'm screwed on this one. Okay.
Oh wow.
Because
right.
I have seduced many unmarried women. I guess I'm not going to say too many of them were sexually untouched because they're all a bunch of whores. No, I'm joking.
Well,
that was just a joke.
But you wouldn't have had a dowry prepared either way.
No, you're right. There is no dowry for me. But I like it. Even like the father, they still have to give the money, you know? Okay, how about this next one?
Uh-oh.
You shall not tolerate a sorceress.
Wow. You should not tolerate. Well,
don't tolerate them.
There's a lot of that stuff in the Torah, though. Throughout these rules, there's a lot of stuff like don't trust sorcerers or sorceresses. Don't trust.
Is there? Because I felt like this was sexist because it's just like a sorceress. They don't say anything about sorcerers.
They say it later, though, don't they? They talk about how, like, you shouldn't be giving your faith to anybody that claims to be able to do magic, because that's God's work. God does magic, nobody.
Okay, but then he's still calling out the sorceress.
Right. Well, they don't tell you. There's no information on there on how to identify.
And does God do magic? Is that magic what God's doing, or is it just like it's God's will magic?
Listen, I'm just saying he doesn't specify how to identify a sorceress. How do you know that you're tolerating a sorceress?
I don't know. Maybe it's like, Salem witch trials kind of way. And they're just like, oh, you're a sorceress. You got to go.
I've been tolerating this woman for long enough, and I figured out finally how I can make her to be a sorceress, and now I can't tolerate it anymore.
Right? I feel like if they support Palestinian human rights, then they're a sorceress.
I mean, I guess it depends on the kinds of robes.
Maybe. It's all about the robes.
It's definitely all about what you're wearing, right?
Okay, this next one. Whoever lies with the beast sexually shall be put to death.
So don't be banging any of those animals in the pits.
Yeah, especially the dead ones.
Right?
Okay, put to death? I mean, wow, that's kind of harsh. I mean, it's bad enough you just had sex with an animal. Now you're going to die from it?
Right? I mean, can't you just carry your shame with you for the rest of your days?
I think that's a bigger punishment. Or like making sure everybody knows that you like had sex with some animal.
Yeah, I mean, how do you reconcile the idea that you've now been sexually touched?
That's true. Okay, so this next one, I'm sure you could already tell where I'm going to be going with it. You shall not oppress nor do any wrong to strangers, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Yeah, this is one that I think we talk about every week on the show, about why the Jews continue to oppress other people.
No, absolutely. Like, it's right here. It's right here in the Bible. He gave us the 10 Commandments, and then he said, don't oppress or do wrong to strangers. And for some reason, Israel just wants to continue to do wrong for strangers because it thinks that Israel belongs to them. Or the land belongs to them.
I mean, listen, this is one of those ones that I think gets forgotten too often.
Right? So remember that one, Israel.
And that one's one of the imperatives, right?
Right?
You would think that that of the ones that are imperative, we would follow.
I would hope, I would wish, but it seems like a lot that has to do with Israel is really not about religion. It's about just wanting to get this land, and it's just about extremism and nationalism. It's not about Judaism. And unfortunately, it's Israel that really wants to tie itself to Judaism and use it as a shield to protect itself from the atrocities that it commits. And I stand by that statement. Then make no mention of any other God. You can't even mention them. We talked about this last week, how insecure God is, that he don't even like an ex-girlfriend. It's like, don't even say her name. Don't even say her name around me. Did you like her picture?
Who were you just praying to? Nobody. I swear, nobody.
Oh, really? Because they saw you praying the other day, and it sure as hell wasn't to me. So tell me, who were you praying to?
I went through your phone and saw you praying to other gods. I know this is a big one. I mean, this comes up again in future Torah portions about not to pray to anybody else. And we talked about this last week. God said he's a jealous God.
Very jealous.
He's very insecure. He wants to make sure you're not worshiping anybody else.
Only him.
Only God.
And then he talks about, these were just some of them. There's a lot of them. These are the ones that stuck out to me. And then he talks about, the feasts for God, the 3 feasts. We have talked about this before, the Passover to remember Egypt, Sukkot, to give the first, pick of the crops to God, which, I don't know, again, what that's about. That's some shady Bible stuff. And then Shavuot, the end of the year when you're, reaping all the benefits. There's another feast, and you got to give stuff to God. They would make the pilgrimages to the temple. So this is where he talks about this. And then Moses goes back up to Sinai to get it all in writing.
Yeah.
To get the tablets. He's like, the Jews are like, we better get this in writing.
Yeah, this needs to be written down specifically. Who knows how long we're going to be wandering out here in the desert. Let's get this stuff written down before we head out.
Yes, totally.
It's interesting. I wonder, 53 things, but only 23 of them are imperative. What are the ones that we don't have?
Well, I think it's ones that you to do. It's a mitzvah, and then if you don't do it, it's a sin. I think that's what it means.
Okay, all right, that makes sense, I guess. But it's still it does feel like a weird thing. Moses comes down and says, "Okay, God gave us these commandments," and people are like, "All right, well, let's do it. We're all in." And he's like, "All right, now for the fine print."
Right? And there's a couple more things I didn't mention before, but also, Moses, we're going to tell you now.
Yeah, you're going to sign this contract in blood, and it's, this is also where they talk about kosher stuff. This is also
where you shouldn't have milk and meat.
Right, where
they talk about that one.
Right.
Yeah, which a horrible thing for the Jews, I think. to keep kosher and not to be able to eat milk and meat. Delicious combinations such as cheeseburgers or cheesy tacos.
I don't know.
Burritos.
It just feels like having a cheeseburger shouldn't be on the same level as
don't fuck the cow.
Killing a pregnant woman.
Yes,
or,
definitely.
Or banging your livestock, right?
Right. It's like don't bang your livestock and don't have milk anywhere near it either.
Yeah. When you're finished banging your cow, don't milk it.
Yeah, right? So if you're having sex with an animal, you better not be lactating and give it a little booby milk. I don't know why I went there. I'm sorry, everybody.
Well, we're all sucking at the teat of one God or another, and this is the one where God was like, no, I'm the only teat you're sucking from. I don't know where I went with that.
Okay, wow. Thanks for making my thing not look as bad, Jordon.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. What a good friend you are.
Now I'm sorry.
I don't know about, that's how yes-ending improv works, but I will take it.
This is what happens when I don't smoke pot before the episode.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, good for you.
I know I showed up. You gave me such a hard time last week. I was like, I have to show up clear-headed on this one.
I'm so glad. It's so hard for Jordon not to smoke weed before 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Well, listen, my stomach was nice and settled already, so I didn't have to worry
I
about
love it how you're like, it's self-medicated for my stomach issues. Like, when you go buy weed, you're like, what do you have for the tummy?
Do you have something that'll help with my bowels?
I don't need any Pepto-Bismol. I just need some weed, motherfuckers.
Is that it that was in this portion?
That's it. It's just the mitzvahs, the things not to do, and Moses is going back up, basically. That's not too exciting. I think the next 2 weeks get a little more exciting. I guess the Golden Calf is coming up. We're not going to be recording the next 2 weeks, so we might miss that one, unfortunately. And, of course, I think Israel has become the Golden Calf, and maybe we'll talk about that more when I get back from my trip. But I think one thing we should talk about, a lot of people are talking about, is Rogan. Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. I know. We didn't really want to talk about Ilhan Omar last week, but here we are again.
Well, I just feel like we have different perspectives, and I think it's kind of bullshit, the way she's being presented. Like, I do want to talk about it because I want to talk about that they're just trying to silence her because she's a woman of color, and they are trying to, again, use anti-Semitism to silence people when, it's just ridiculous, and especially coming from the Republican Party because, Trump is having dinner with Holocaust deniers, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, there's so many people that have said anti-Semitic remarks or have done things that aren't good for Jews. But of course, they keep a blind eye. But Ilhan Omar is an easy target, and they want to shut down. And they were talking about her on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Joe Rogan always has to try to be trending in some way, right?
I mean, I think he is trending. I mean, he has millions of followers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so Joe Rogan said the idea that Jewish people are not into money is ridiculous. That's like saying Italians aren't into pizza.
I mean, this is a pretty ignorant statement, I would think. I mean, obviously...
For two reasons. One, everybody's into money, and everybody's into pizza.
Right? I mean, especially if you go on Tinder or Bumble, everybody loves pizza and sushi. Those are the two things it seems like everybody wants to eat.
Okay, and I feel pretty strongly that people really enjoy pizza off the dating apps as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love pizza.
I'm a big pizza guy.
And I'm lactose intolerant.
Oh my gosh, that's a commitment to cheese right there.
It is. I love it. It's a staple of my diet.
So, everyone's giving Rogan such a hard time. I'm a fan of Joe Rogan. I don't listen to his podcast often. I'll just see clips sometimes. But I I kind of like his message of, trying to get out things that other people want to suppress. I think he's into free speech, and I often appreciate his perspective on things. Maybe this was a bad choice of words. Again, I think people are using this stuff as a distraction. They want to use a distraction. Oh, now Rogan's so anti-Semitic. The Jews do like money. Everybody likes money. That's not a crazy ass thing to say. I'm sorry.
You know what though? It's part of this argument though, where he's muddying the waters of an issue that should be easy to dismiss, but he's bringing it back up in such a way to stir the pot. And I don't know why he's going out of his way to make this more controversial than it needs to be. Like what we were talking about last week, we're talking about how Ilhan Omar is one of the few people that is criticizing Israel and not the Jews. Her statements were not anti-Semitic by a lot of standards. Joe Rogan coming out and saying this stuff the way he's saying it, I feel like is he's not being as clear.
I mean, I guess, but it's like, who's gonna deny this? Like, are Jews not like into money? I don't know about this analogy about the pizza thing, but I feel like, yeah, everybody loves money. So do Jews. Like, it's not crazy to say something like that. Like, to say Jews control all the money. Okay, yes, I could see that being a serious problem with anti-Semitism. But just to say that, like, Jews are, like, into money, like, yeah, we are. So is everybody. So is fucking Joe Rogan, who makes, like, $200 million off his Spotify deal.
Yeah, well, there's also, people that have pushed back against what he was saying. There are people who are fans of Joe Rogan's who are, saying that, talking, trying to combat what he's, what's the word I'm thinking of? The people that are fans of his are challenging the way that he was talking about this, basically saying, if you want to talk to actual Jewish people who understand the significance of using these tropes, like, we can talk about it. But to just throw this stuff out there the way he is it's a little bit too casual.
You think he's being too casual with, like, talking about these things, but, like, can't he be casual in his life? Can't he just say what's on his mind and what he thinks? I feel like he is someone that is, a supporter of free speech, and I don't think he meant this in a hateful way. He was just saying, like, hey, why are we denying this? Why are we calling out this woman and giving her such a hard time and trying to ruin her career from saying something that, it's true of everybody, and especially the way she said it and what she meant it about, like, AIPAC and other Jewish lobbying groups and, the money they put into support for Israel. Like, she's right on. If you want to hear more about it, I actually talked about this a lot on the last episode of How You Like Me Now. But, yeah, I mean, you got to be careful with what you say. But I don't know. Like, I typically in the past have had a hard time when people said things like this. But now, to me, it's just like, this is what we're talking about? The 39 Palestinians have been killed this year alone. Homes are being destroyed in the West Bank, and we're all being distracted because Joe Rogan compared Jews' love of money to Italians' love of pizza. It's like, it's a smokescreen. So, people, like, the Jews could play the victim card. I'm sorry, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the Jews always, like, trying to be the victims, where, like, we're not always the victims, and we don't have to be the victims. We might have been the victims of the Holocaust. We might have been victims of anti-Semitism in the past. We might still be victims of anti-Semitism. But that doesn't mean we have to take every opportunity we have to victimize ourselves.
That may be true, but I also think that because we go on out of our way to, like it's known that Jews have this, like, hair trigger reaction to a lot of this stuff. That Jews claim anti-Semitism when it's clearly, just misinformed.
Not.
But I feel like the fact that some of these things get thrown out very casually is bad. It becomes a thing where it becomes normalized to start saying these things that are stereotypes or tropes that have been used to, shame or diminish the Jewish influence on the world.
No, like, what do you mean? Like,
when people go around talking about this stuff, like, it's, the Jews are into money. It's all like it's a slippery slope to, like, how can you necessarily figure out the intent of that statement?
But I mean, like, there is a truth to what he's saying. Jewish people, we do care about success. We do care about money. We keep money in our communities. We want to send money to Israel. We originally, the Christians, they made us the bankers because we had to lend the money.
But I'm saying,
like money's been important to us as survivors too. As people have been persecuted, it's been important for the Jewish people to succeed in life. And I feel like, there's got to be times when we got to be like, okay, well, like, this isn't really a pressing issue right now. But I feel like we just want to constantly play our victim card.
I know that we want to play the victim card a lot, and that comes up. But I also think that it is still dangerous to be able to talk about this stuff so cavalierly, just to make I just think it's, there's people who say this stuff sometimes don't understand the larger historical context of spouting that stuff, of promoting those kinds of ideas. Saying that, well, everybody likes money, but how come the Jews are the ones that are always called out for it? where it's usually like, well, obviously, because they're the Jews and they love the money. Like, so it's
But I don't know. There's a movie called Crazy Rich Asians. Yeah, it is a Jewish thing because Jews are successful. Jews have had a large history in the banking business. Of course, some of the biggest people of wealth, like the Rothschilds, they are Jewish. George Soros is Jewish. So what are we going to say? We can't deny the reality because in the past, people might have used terms like this to, persecute Jews or to portray Jews badly. But it's like part of us wants to own this and own things like that. And then part of, when it's good for us, when we are succeeding, we're helping our communities and we're helping our families, but then when someone wants to say, hey, guys, it's the opposite way. And I don't think this is as bad as what Kanye said when he was like, the Jews control. He didn't say the Jews control all the money. He just said the Jews are into money. It's we are. I'm everybody's into money. It's not only Jews though. So should he have said everybody's into money, including the Jews? Would that have been better? Who knows?
I don't know. I watched this week's episode of South Park, which is sort of about this a little bit.
Oh, okay. I don't watch South Park.
It's the new episode of South Park where Cartman starts spreading a rumor that Kyle is, because he's Jewish, runs Hollywood. So
all right.
So everybody in the town is trying to give him their script,
Okay, nice.
And he's trying to tell anybody I'm a Jew, I don't run Hollywood. What the hell's the matter with you? And he gets up in front of the whole school and he's like, listen, the Jews don't run Hollywood. There are Jewish people who work in Hollywood. And back in the day when Jews were thrown out of every other business, they came to California and they started the movie business because it was one of the few things, but it was considered a low art form. And over time, it became a bigger, a multi-billion-dollar
right.
thing.
Jews have a history of doing all the work that other people didn't want to do. And so, then they succeeded in it, and then it became it's a bad thing that the Jews did that.
Well, so the funny thing is that at the end of the episode, the audience is like, oh my God, this kid knows exactly what he's talking about. I think he should run Hollywood. But it's it's really funny how it perpetuates itself so much, the way that people talk about it, and it becomes a running joke rather than a serious discussion about where some of these, like I said, the intent behind it,
But we don't own our influence that we have in Hollywood. We don't own that perhaps, there are so many Jews working in the field and that are in roles of, producers, whether it be in music or film, or directors or writers, that there is a large, Jewish population that are involved in that stuff, and we just want to be so quick to be like, oh, no, don't say that, instead of being like, hey, listen, we do have a large part of it. We don't control it all, but, it's so hard for me because I was so much more against this, but I see so many things, especially things that Israel does, where they try to control this narrative, where it's just oh, this is where it comes from, where people say the Jews control the media because we want to create what we want people to think and what we want people to say, and people have that. And I think unfortunately there were 2 Israelis were killed when a car drove into a bus station, and of course they're so quick to call this a terrorist attack,
right?
But it's resistance is what it is. It is resistance from people that are having all their basic human rights violated, who've been living under an occupation and oppression for years, who are seeing their family, their friends, their parents, everybody dead and killed by Israeli, getting punitive punishments for other people's crimes, and then they want to react to that and fight back, and but all around the world they're labeled as terrorists, and I'm sorry, it makes me see things differently and makes me wonder oh my gosh, these are where these horrible anti-Semitic narratives come from, because there are Jewish people that do this. I've seen so many videos recently where straight up Israeli propaganda, and I'm like, what is happening now? This is just these. Who's making this video? What is going on? This is not true. This is total lies. This is straight up Israel propaganda, and they don't see at all how they're feeding into these narratives of people when they say the Jews control the media, when they're spreading these lies and trying to create this image of Israel and Palestine that isn't the reality in which these people live.
Listen, I agree. I think that to a certain degree there is. A lot of this is a distraction from some of these bigger issues, but I still do think that it is important that people who say this type of stuff understand the significance of it, of the history of it.
So what do you think that significance is?
Well, I just think it's dangerous to say this stuff in a casual way and throw it out there like you're just like, talking about the weather.
Why is it dangerous?
Because a lot of times people that are listening to it may not understand that there's a fine line between like the reality and what people like the propaganda people are trying to push on you. Like, is it a negative connotation to the Jews when people are talking about it, or is it just a thing that's like one of the things that Jews celebrate about themselves?
Do you think that Joe Rogan was saying it with a negative connotation? Because I don't.
I don't know if he was saying it with a negative connotation, but what I'm saying is that people who are listening to it may take it with a negative connotation.
So, but that's not like, hey, things that we might say on this podcast, people might take with a negative connotation. That can't be every person's responsibility, how someone is going to accept or decipher something that somebody says. But that doesn't mean that we should all be like, oh, we can't talk because somebody might take what I say the wrong way.
No, but I'm saying have a little bit of understanding about what you're saying and understand the weight of it, so that when you say it, you're not throwing it out there like it's a nothing statement. Have some conviction behind what you're saying. Understand what the significance of it is, and be able to.
I mean, I think you're like talking circles. So, like, what is the significance?
The fact that there are people who say these kinds of things as slurs against Jews, as ways to like put the Jews down, like, oh, the Jews only care about money. That's all. Like, that's the slippery slope that those kinds of statements go down. And I think that when you perpetuate that stuff without bringing that kind of context into it, it can be dangerous. Obviously, you can't control how people hear it, but you can still control how you say it and how you disseminate the information and how you put it out there in such a way so people understand what your perspective is.
Okay. I mean, I guess I just think that, like, people should be able to say things without having to worry how people are going to interpret it. And I like agree with you at some point, like, but I think, like, I don't think what Rogan said was like that. I think this is a case of being blown out of proportion. I think what happens is this is what we do. We're like the boy who cried anti-Semitism so much that it waters down when the real Semitic things happen, because it seems like we're just so quick to say everything's anti-Semitic. Case in point, criticizing Israel, criticizing the way Palestinians are treated, and that's immediately so many people want to say, you're an anti-Semite, and it's just like, that is not anti-Semitic at all, and then it kind of like takes away from what really is anti-Semitic.
I don't know. I just think, like, every time there's like a big event, people come out and say, oh, we condemn anti-Semitism in the strongest words possible. But then there's stuff like this where they are like making jokes in the most stereotypical way possible, and it's not the same level of the strongest words possible. That's how I think.
Alrighty. Well, I hope our words have been as strong as possible this week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you're not subscribing to our YouTube page, please do it. Follow us across social media, American Jew Pod. You can check me out on social media at Jonathan Randall. You could check out my other podcast, How You Like Me Now.
You can follow me on Instagram at Beatnik Nudnik. You can follow my other podcast, Where's the Grief? And we're taking a week off, right? Because you're going to South America?
I'm going to Colombia.
All right. Viva la Colombia.
All right.
Everybody.
So hopefully I won't get kidnapped, and I'll come back and we'll be bringing you some more American Jew. In the meantime, we'll be posting videos on our social media and YouTube, so be sure to check them out.
Ay, ay, ay. All right. Perfect.
Did we do a test before?
We didn't, actually.
Does it sound good? Well, let's hope for the best right now.
What is this? Is episode 13? No, it's 14.